The autumn rain pattered against the windshield of Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan's department-issued SUV as she pulled into her driveway at 11:42 p.m. The house was mostly dark, except for the soft glow from the kitchen window. After a grueling 16-hour shift handling a multi-vehicle pileup on Route 27, all she wanted was a hot shower and to fall into bed beside her husband, Tom. 25 years of marriage had built a rhythm, a certainty that felt unshakable. The cardiologist and the sheriff, Oakridge's power couple, as the local paper once called them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Beth didn't immediately register the unfamiliar sedan parked across the street, a dark blue Toyota with out-of-county plates. She was too focused on the fact that Tom's Audi was missing from its usual spot. Strange for a Wednesday night, Tom's hospital shifts typically ended at 8, and he was religious about his routine. The kitchen light meant he was home, though. Maybe he'd gone to help a neighbor or pick up a late prescription. Inside, the house felt different. 25 years of law enforcement had given Beth a sixth sense, an ability to feel when something was off. The air smelled of Tom's favorite scotch, but mingled with another cologne she didn't recognize, something woodsy and expensive. Tom's reading glasses sat on the coffee table beside an unfamiliar leather wallet. "Tom!" she called, removing her service weapon and setting it in the hallway lockbox. No answer. Her sheriff's instincts kicked in. Moving silently through the downstairs, she noticed other inconsistencies. 2 tumblers on the kitchen counter, Tom's phone charging but with the screen face down, a suit jacket she didn't recognize draped over a dining room chair. Then she heard it, the muffled sounds from upstairs, from their bedroom. Her heart began to pound, not with the measured beat of a law enforcement officer approaching danger, but with the erratic rhythm of a wife about to have her world shattered. Beth climbed the stairs, each step deliberate and quiet, the way she'd approached hundreds of volatile scenes throughout her career. The master bedroom door was closed, but not completely. A sliver of light escaped through the crack. The sounds grew clearer. Heavy breathing, whispered words, the familiar creak of their bed frame. For a moment, she froze, her hand hovering inches from the door. In her 22 years as a law enforcement officer, 15 as sheriff, Beth Morgan had faced armed suspects, hostage situations, and grisly crime scenes with unflinching resolve. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. She pushed the door open. The scene burned itself into her memory. Tangled sheets, bare skin, her husband's familiar form entwined with another's. It took her brain several seconds to process what her eyes were seeing. Not another woman. Her brother Andy. Time seemed to stop. The tableau before her remained frozen for what felt like eternity. Then Andy saw her. His eyes widened in horror. Tom turned, his expression transforming from passion to shock to shame in an instant. "Beth!" Both men spoke her name simultaneously, scrambling to cover themselves. The next moments played out like a surreal nightmare. Beth stood immobilized in the doorway, her brain struggling to reconcile 25 years of marriage with the scene before her. 25 years of shared holidays, family dinners with Andy at their table, vacations, anniversary celebrations, all suddenly recontextualized into something unrecognizable. How long? The question escaped her lips before she even realized. She was speaking. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears, unnaturally calm. Tom and Andy exchanged a look that told her everything. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was something established, something with history. "Beth, please," Tom started, reaching for his discarded pants. "How long?" The sheriff's voice. Now, the voice that commanded respect throughout Pinewood County, that made hardened criminals confess. Andy spoke first, his voice barely audible. 20 years. The world tilted beneath Beth's feet. 20 years. They'd been married for 25, which meant since the wedding weekend, Tom confirmed, reading her thoughts. It started the night before our wedding. Beth's mind flashed to her brother's toast at their reception. Tom, you're not just gaining a wife today, you're gaining a brother. The memory twisted into something grotesque. Beth, we never wanted to hurt you, Andy said, pulling on his shirt with trembling hands. Something broke inside Sheriff Morgan. The professional calm that had defined her career shattered. She lunged forward, her fist connecting with her brother's jaw with a sickening crack. Andy stumbled backward, blood spraying from his split lip. Tom jumped between them. Beth, stop, this isn't... What? This isn't what? What exactly isn't this, Tom? Beth's voice rose hysterically. This isn't you fucking my brother for our entire marriage. This isn't the two people I trusted most betraying me for 20 years. Tom reached for her, but Beth backed away. Don't you dare touch me. We need to talk about this, Tom pleaded, his physician's composure crumbling. It's complicated. Complicated. Beth laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. Let me uncomplicate it for you. Get out, both of you, now. This is my house too, Tom said, a flash of defiance crossing his features. Beth's hand moved instinctively to her hip, where her service weapon would normally be. Finding it absent, she pointed toward the door instead. I have a department full of deputies who would be here in 3 minutes if I called. How would you like to explain this situation to them, to your colleagues at the hospital, to this entire town? Andy, still clutching his bleeding face, grabbed his clothes. Tom, let's go. Give her space. Beth watched as the two men dressed hurriedly, avoiding her gaze and each other's. The practiced efficiency of their movements told her this wasn't the first time they'd rushed to dress after being together. How many times had this happened under her roof? How many guys' fishing weekends and medical conferences had been? In covers? Once they were dressed, Beth followed them downstairs, maintaining distance as if they were suspects she was escorting. At the front door, Tom turned. Beth, please, I love you. This doesn't change that. Get out before I forget I'm an officer of the law, she whispered. When the door closed behind them, Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan, respected law enforcement officer and pillar of the Oakridge community, sank to the floor and did something she hadn't done since her father's funeral. She sobbed. Across town, Dr. Sarah Wilson was finishing paperwork in her office at Lakeview Medical Center when her phone buzzed. The text from Tom was brief. Emergency. Need place to stay. As Tom's closest colleague and friend for over a decade, she'd grown accustomed to his cryptic messages. Usually they concerned sensitive patient matters they couldn't discuss over unsecured lines. But something about this felt different. What's happening? She texted back. The response came quickly. Beth knows. Sarah set down her pen, her heart sinking. For 12 years, she'd been the only person who knew about Tom and Andy. She'd discovered them by accident during a medical conference in Chicago, returning to Tom's hotel room to retrieve borrowed presentation notes. The secret had weighed on her, especially as she grew closer to Beth through hospital charity events and community functions. She'd urged Tom countless times to come clean, warning him that secrets this big always found their way to the surface. Coming now, don't go to Andy's place. Too obvious, she texted, grabbing her keys. Across the county at the Parker family cabin, Andy sat on the worn leather sofa, holding an ice pack to his swollen jaw while Tom paced frantically. We have to talk to her, Tom insisted, running his hands through his silver-streaked hair. Make her understand. Andy lowered the ice pack, revealing the angry purple bruise blooming across his face. Understand what exactly? That her husband and brother have been sleeping together for 2 decades? That we've been lying to her face every day since your bachelor party? What part of that do you think she's going to understand, Tom? Tom stopped pacing. We didn't mean for it to happen, but it did happen, and we kept choosing for it to happen over and over. The cabin fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock that had belonged to their parents. Andy looked around at the familiar space, the framed family photos on the mantel, including one of Beth on her academy graduation day. Andy and Tom flanking her proudly. The fishing gear by the door that provided their most reliable alibi. The second bedroom where Tom kept a toothbrush and change of clothes for fishing trips. "She'll never forgive us," Andy finally said. "She might, eventually. Beth has always been the strongest of us all." Andy stood up suddenly, wincing at the pain in his jaw. "Don't you get it? It's over, everything, my career in law enforcement, your reputation at the hospital, our relationship with Beth, it's all gone. You don't know that. I do know that. Beth is the county sheriff. I'm her deputy chief. Do you have any idea what this will do to the department, to her authority, to her reputation?" Andy's voice cracked. "We were selfish, Tom. For 20 years, we've been unbelievably, unforgivably selfish." Tom moved toward him, arms outstretched, but Andy stepped back. "No, not here, not anymore. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." The sound of tires on gravel interrupted them. Through the window, they saw Sarah's Mercedes pulling up. Tom opened the door before she could knock. Sarah Wilson entered, her expression grim. At 48, she carried herself with the poised confidence of a woman who had built her career in a male-dominated field. Her assessment of the situation was clinical, efficient. "Andy, that jaw needs x-rays. Tom, you both need to lawyer up immediately. This isn't just a marital issue anymore. This is a public scandal waiting to explode." She looked between them. "Beth could destroy both your careers with a single press conference." "She wouldn't do that," Tom argued, Sarah's eyebrow raised skeptically. "You just destroyed her entire understanding of her life. You have no idea what she will or won't do." Back at the Morgan home, Beth sat at her kitchen table, staring at the wedding photo that had hung on their wall for 25 years. She'd taken it down, unable to bear the sight of Tom and Andy standing together at the altar, both smiling at her with what she now recognized as guilty knowledge in their eyes. Her phone had been ringing non-stop. First Tom, then Andy, then Sarah, confirming Beth's suspicion that she'd known too. And finally Maria from the office, calling about the schedule for tomorrow's county security briefing. Beth had ignored them all. As dawn broke over Pinewood County, Sheriff Morgan made 2 calls. The first was to Department HR, requesting a personal leave of absence, effective immediately. The second was to a locksmith. By noon, the locks had been changed. Tom's clothes had been packed into garbage bags and left on the front porch, and Beth was on her 3rd glass of bourbon, something she never did, especially not before sundown. The numbness it provided was welcome. The call she'd been dreading finally came at 2:17 p.m., the department's main line, not her direct number. "Sheriff Morgan," she answered automatically. "Beth, it's Jim Reynolds." The detective's voice was formal, uncomfortable. "We've got a situation at Pine Lake, the Parker cabin." Beth's hand tightened around the glass. "Send Johnson." "Beth." His voice softened. "It's Andy. He's been shot." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "Is he alive?" A pause that told her everything. "No, I'm sorry, Beth. Secure the scene. I'm on my way." The sheriff was back, personal tragedy temporarily compartmentalized. The drive to Pine Lake took 23 minutes. Each second stretched painfully as Beth's mind raced through possibilities. A self-inflicted wound, a confrontation with Tom gone wrong, an unrelated incident. The cabin's perimeter was already taped off when she arrived. 3 patrol cars and the medical examiner's van parked haphazardly in the gravel driveway. Detective Reynolds met her before she could duck under the yellow tape. "Beth, you shouldn't be here. This is a conflict of—" "What happened?" she demanded, cutting him off. Reynolds' weathered face tightened. "Single gunshot wound to the chest. Dr. Morgan found him about an hour ago when he came to talk, called it in immediately, attempted resuscitation, but—" "Where is he?" "Tom. Inside with Officer Ramirez. He's pretty broken up." Beth pushed past Reynolds, ignoring his protests. The cabin's interior was a frozen tableau of tragedy. Crime scene technicians photographed blood spatter on the rustic wood walls. The medical examiner knelt beside a sheet-covered form on the floor, Andy's form, though Beth refused to look directly at it. And there, sitting at the dining table with Officer Ramirez, was Tom. His blue scrubs were stained dark with dried blood, Andy's blood, and his hands were cupped around a mug of untouched coffee. He looked up as she entered. His eyes were red-rimmed, haunted. "Beth, what happened?" The sheriff's voice, professional and detached. Tom's gaze darted to the other officers in the room, then back to her. "Can we talk privately?" "Absolutely not," Beth replied. "This is an active crime scene in a potential homicide investigation. You will answer my questions here, with witnesses." Tom flinched at the word homicide. "It was an accident. We were arguing. The gun was there, your backup piece that Andy kept here. He picked it up. I tried to take it from him and it just went off." Beth's eyes narrowed. "Why were you arguing?" Again, Tom's eyes swept the room, cataloging the listening ears. "About us. About what happened. About what we were going to do now that you knew." Beth felt rather than saw the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere as the officers processed this exchange. Their private shame was already becoming public knowledge. "Officer Ramirez, please continue taking Dr. Morgan's statement. Detective Reynolds, with me." Outside, Beth pulled Reynolds aside. "I'm compromised. Your lead on this." Reynolds nodded. "Already assumed that." "Beth, this isn't the time, Jim. I need you to be thorough. Pull phone records, check for gunshot residue. Treat this like any other case." Her voice remained steady even as her world continued to collapse. "And if it points to homicide?" Beth's gaze traveled back to the cabin window, where she could see Tom's slumped shoulders. 25 years of marriage, 20 years of betrayal, and now her brother dead by her husband's hand, accident or otherwise. "Then you do your job, detective, and you let justice take its course." At Oakridge Community Hospital's chapel, Pastor David Collins sat beside Beth in the empty back pew. The hospital's automatic doors had triggered twice while they sat in silence, an orderly pushing an elderly patient and a young couple leaving with a newborn. Life continuing its relentless cycle, while Beth's remained frozen in nightmare. "Andy's gone," she finally said, her voice hollow. "My brother is dead." Pastor Collins, who had married Beth and Tom, who had baptized Andy's children, who had counseled the Morgan family through the death of Beth's parents, simply nodded. "Yes, Tom killed him. The investigation will determine what happened." Beth turned to look at the pastor, her eyes red but dry. "Tom and Andy were lovers for 20 years, since the day before my wedding." To his credit, Pastor Collins showed only a moment of shock before his expression settled back into one of compassionate attention. "I see. Do you? Because I don't. I don't see how the 2 people I loved most could lie to me every day for 2 decades. I don't see how my entire life could be built on a foundation of deception. Your life is built on more than your relationship with Tom and Andy," the pastor said gently. "Your work, your faith, your friendships. All tainted now, Beth interrupted. Every memory recontextualized, every shared moment suspect, every person who knew and didn't tell me complicit. Not everyone knew, Beth. A bitter laugh escaped. Her. Sarah knew. Probably Michael, too. Who else? My deputies, the hospital staff? Was I the only one in Oakridge not in on the joke? This wasn't a joke to anyone, least of all Tom and Andy. Beth stood abruptly. Don't defend them. Not to me. As she walked out of the chapel, Pastor Collins called after her. What will you do now, Beth? She paused at the door but didn't turn around. What I've always done. My job. At the Pinewood County Sheriff's Department, the atmosphere was tense as Beth walked through the bullpen. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Eyes followed her. Then, quickly averted when she looked up. Maria met her at her office door, tablet in hand. The press is calling non-stop. The mayor wants a statement. And the medical examiner just sent over the preliminary report on Deputy Chief Parker. Beth took the tablet, scanning the report with practiced efficiency. Cause of death, single gunshot wound to the chest. Time of death, approximately 1:30 p.m. Gunshot residue found on both the deceased and Dr. Thomas Morgan, consistent with a struggle over the weapon. Manner of death, pending investigation. Where is Detective Reynolds? Interviewing Dr. Wilson. At the station, she came in voluntarily with information. Beth's jaw tightened. What information? Maria hesitated. She says she has text messages from both Tom and Andy, from yesterday and this morning. I want transcripts of that interview on my desk within the hour. Sheriff, Maria said carefully, maybe you should. That's all, Maria. Left alone in her office, Beth stared at the wall of commendations and photos that chronicled her law enforcement career, her and Andy graduating from the academy together, their joint promotion photo when she became sheriff and appointed him deputy chief, the newspaper clipping when they broke the county's largest drug smuggling operation, brother and sister, partners in justice, all lies. The transcripts arrived. 53 minutes later, Beth read them twice, her hands growing increasingly unsteady. Sarah Wilson had indeed known about the affair for 12 years. She'd covered for them, providing alibis when needed. The text messages from the previous night showed Tom and Andy panicking after Beth's discovery, but it was the messages from the morning that made Beth's blood run cold. Tom to Sarah, 9:17 a.m. He's talking about confessing everything, going public. Says Beth deserves the truth. Sarah to Tom, 9:19 a.m. Stop him. That would destroy all three of you. Tom to Sarah, 10:45 a.m. He's not listening. Says he's tired of the lies. Meeting him at the cabin at 1. Need to make him see reason. Sarah to Tom, 11:02 a.m. Whatever it takes. This can't come out. Beth set down the transcripts, her sheriff's mind connecting dots her heart didn't want to acknowledge. Whatever it takes. The argument, the gun, the accident. Her intercom buzzed. Sheriff, Detective Reynolds needs to see you. Reynolds entered without waiting for a response, his expression grave. Ballistics report, he said, placing another tablet on her desk. The angle. A ventry is inconsistent with a struggle over the weapon, and there's no gunshot residue on Andy's hands, only Tom's. Are you telling me? I'm telling you that the evidence points to Dr. Morgan shooting Deputy Chief Parker deliberately from a distance of approximately 6 feet, not during a struggle over the weapon. Beth closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she was no longer a betrayed wife or a grieving sister. She was Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan. Arrest him. The arrest of Dr. Thomas Morgan for the murder of Deputy Chief Andrew Parker exploded across Pinewood County like wildfire. By nightfall, national news vans had set up outside the courthouse. Oakridge scandal was trending on social media with gossip, speculation, and increasingly accurate details spreading rapidly. Beth watched the coverage from her office, the volume muted. The press conference had been handled by the department's public information officer, with Beth conspicuously absent. The official statement mentioned only that Deputy Chief Parker had been found deceased at his cabin, and that Dr. Morgan was in custody, assisting with the investigation. The truth would come out soon enough, in preliminary hearings, in witness testimony, in evidence presentations. The affair, the deception, the confrontation, and finally, the murder. Beth's private tragedy would become public property, dissected on true crime podcasts and docuseries for years to come. Her phone rang. Private number. "Sheriff Morgan," she answered. "Beth, Tom's voice. He must be using his one phone call from county lockup. Please, listen to me." She should hang up, direct him to her attorney, but some masochistic part of her needed to hear what he would say. "I'm listening." "I loved him," Tom said, his voice breaking. "And I loved you. It wasn't supposed to be a choice. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. But it did hurt someone, Tom. It hurt me for 20 years. And now Andy is dead. That was an accident." "Stop lying," Beth interrupted, a sudden clarity washing over her. "The ballistics don't show a struggle. You shot him from across the room because he wanted to tell the truth, and you couldn't bear for your perfect reputation to be ruined." Silence stretched between them. "Sarah will verify my story," Tom finally said. "Sarah's text messages already paint a different picture. Whatever it takes, Tom, you chose your path." In the background, Beth could hear someone, probably a guard, telling Tom his time was up. "I never meant for this to happen," Tom said hurriedly. "Any of it. You have to believe that, Beth." Beth thought of the life she'd built, the marriage she'd believed in, the brother she'd trusted, all reduced to ashes. "I don't have to believe anything you say ever again." She hung up, setting the phone down carefully on her desk. Through her office window, she could see her deputies going about their duties, answering calls, filing reports, preparing for the night shift. The machinery of justice continuing despite personal catastrophes. Tomorrow, she would have to face them all. Face the questions, the whispers, the pity. Face the preliminary hearing, where the details of her most intimate betrayal would become court record. Face a future utterly different from the one she'd envisioned just 24 hours ago. Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan stood, straightened her uniform, and prepared to step back into the world that had shattered around her. Whatever came next, she would face it as she had faced every challenge in her life, with the strength and determination that had carried her through the police academy, through the ranks to sheriff, and now through the ruins of her personal life. Justice would be served, even if it broke her heart. The Pinewood County Courthouse stood as a monument to small-town justice, its red brick colonial architecture projecting an aura of stability that felt mockingly at odds with the chaos unfolding within its walls. The preliminary hearing for Dr. Thomas Morgan was set for 9 a.m., the marble hallways already packed with reporters, curious locals, and legal personnel by 7:30. Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan entered through a side entrance, escorted by Maria and 2 trusted deputies. She'd chosen to wear her full uniform, the weight of the badge and gun belt, providing an armor of authority she desperately needed. Her appearance drew hushed whispers and not so subtle pointing. Yesterday's respected law enforcement leader was today's tabloid spectacle. District Attorney Melissa Carter met her in a small conference room adjacent to the courtroom. At 47, Carter had prosecuted everything from petty theft to triple homicides during her 15-year tenure, but even she seemed unsettled by the case before them. "The defense is pushing hard for bail," Carter explained, sliding a folder across the table. "Judge Harrison seems inclined to grant it, considering Dr. Morgan's standing in the community and lack of prior record." Beth's jaw tightened. He killed my brother. We believe he did, Carter corrected gently, but the case has complications. The defense will argue that the relationship between the victim and the accused creates reasonable doubt about motive. The text messages are suggestive but not definitive. Whatever it takes could mean many things. Beth stared at the district attorney, the woman who had been a political ally and occasional dinner guest in her home. Are you saying you don't think we have a case? Carter straightened. I'm saying this will be messy, personal, and public. Your testimony will be crucial, but it will also expose every detail of your private life to scrutiny. Are you prepared for that? Before Beth could answer, Maria knocked and entered. They're ready. Courtroom 1 fell silent as Beth entered. She kept her gaze forward, refusing to acknowledge the stares. 2 rows behind the prosecution table sat Pastor Collins and several deputies, a small island of support in a sea of spectacle. On the defense side, Sarah Wilson sat rigidly beside. Her husband Michael, her face a mask of composure. Beth noted with bitter satisfaction that no one from the hospital had come to support Tom. The bailiff called for all to rise as Judge Robert Harrison entered. At 68, Harrison had presided over Pinewood County's most significant cases. For 2 decades, his reputation for fairness was matched only by his intolerance for media circuses, a balance that would be severely tested today. Be seated, Harrison ordered, surveying the packed courtroom with obvious displeasure. Let me make something abundantly clear. This courtroom is not entertainment. Any disruptions will result in immediate removal and possible contempt charges. Is that understood? The courtroom murmured its assent. Bring in the defendant. Tom entered from a side door, escorted by court officers. The orange jumpsuit hung loosely on his frame, his normally impeccable appearance diminished by a night in county lockup. His eyes immediately sought Beth's, but she refused to meet his gaze. Judge Harrison addressed the court. We're here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of the state versus Dr. Thomas Morgan on charges of second-degree murder in the death of Deputy Chief Andrew Parker. Are counsel ready to proceed? Both sides indicated their readiness. Tom's attorney, Gregory Mitchell, rose first. Your Honor, we request reasonable bail. Dr. Morgan is a respected cardiologist with no criminal history and deep ties to this community. He poses no flight risk. District Attorney Carter countered. The defendant is charged with murdering a law enforcement officer, Your Honor. The evidence indicates premeditation. Furthermore, given the defendant's financial resources and the severity of the potential sentence, we consider him a significant flight risk. The arguments continued for 20 minutes, a carefully choreographed legal dance that seemed surreal against the backdrop of Beth's shattered life. Finally, Judge Harrison set bail at $1 million, high enough to acknowledge the severity of the charges, but not the no bail that Carter had requested. Beth watched as Mitchell conferred with Tom, who nodded. The bail would be posted within hours. Tom would walk free, at least until trial. The preliminary presentation of evidence began with Detective Reynolds outlining the crime scene findings. As crime scene photos appeared on the courtroom monitors, Beth forced herself to look at the blood-spattered cabin walls, at Andy's body on the floor, at the evidence markers identifying the trajectory of the bullet that had killed her brother. Reynolds' testimony was clinical, professional. The angle of the gunshot wound is inconsistent with a struggle over the weapon. The gunshot residue patterns indicate the firearm was discharged approximately 6 feet from the victim, not during close quarter contact as initially claimed by the defendant. Mitchell cross-examined aggressively. Detective, is it possible the residue pattern could result from Deputy Chief Parker raising his arms during the struggle, creating distance between himself and the weapon? Possible, but highly unlikely, given the other physical evidence. And this weapon belonged to Sheriff Morgan, correct? A backup service weapon she kept at the cabin? Yes, with Deputy Chief Parker's knowledge and consent. So the deceased was familiar with this weapon and had access to it regularly. Reynolds hesitated, glancing briefly at Beth. Yes, Mitchell pressed on. Detective, is there any physical evidence that definitively rules out the possibility that Deputy Chief Parker's death was self-inflicted? A murmur ran through the courtroom. Objection. Carter rose. Counsel is suggesting a scenario completely unsupported by evidence. I'm exploring alternative explanations consistent with the physical evidence, Mitchell countered. Judge Harrison considered. I'll allow it, but tread carefully, Counselor. Detective, please answer the question. Reynolds' jaw tightened. The angle is highly atypical for self-infliction, and there was no gunshot residue on the victim's hands. So yes, the physical evidence effectively rules out suicide. The hearing continued with the medical examiner's testimony, followed by the ballistics expert. Each witness added another piece to the puzzle, another nail in Tom's legal coffin. Yet Beth felt no satisfaction, only a hollow emptiness where certainty should be. When the court recessed for lunch, Beth retreated to an empty jury room, unable to face the courthouse cafeteria crowds. Maria brought her a sandwich and coffee, then stood awkwardly by the door. "What is it?" Beth asked, recognizing her assistant's hesitation. "There's someone asking to speak with you privately. Says it's about evidence that wasn't in the initial investigation." Beth's law enforcement instincts sharpened. Who? Michael Wilson, Sarah's husband. Beth considered refusing, then nodded. 5 minutes. Michael Wilson entered cautiously. At 52, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had built a successful accounting practice. Through diligence rather than charisma. Beth had known him for years, golf outings, hospital fundraisers, holiday parties, but realized she knew almost nothing about him beyond his professional reputation. "Sheriff Morgan," he began formally, "I appreciate you seeing me. What evidence do you have, Mr. Wilson?" Michael sat across from her, placing a sealed envelope on the table between them. "Sarah doesn't know I'm here, if she did." He trailed off, then straightened his shoulders. "I found these in our home office last night, after the arrest." Beth opened the envelope and removed several printed emails. As she read, her expression hardened. "These are dated 2 weeks ago." Michael nodded. Tom and Sarah were planning a conference presentation together. She had access to his professional email account to review their materials. He hesitated. "When I saw the news about Andy, I checked her computer. She hadn't logged out of Tom's account." The emails were between Tom and Andy, using Tom's medical email rather than their personal accounts, presumably for discretion. They revealed an escalating tension in the relationship. Andy expressing guilt about the deception, Tom reassuring him they could continue as they had been, Andy insisting he wanted to come clean, especially after Beth's upcoming milestone birthday, Tom becoming increasingly desperate in his attempts to dissuade him. The final email, sent just 3 days before the confrontation, contained a line that made Beth's blood run cold. "If you tell her, everything I've built is destroyed. Everything we've built. I can't let that happen, Andy. I won't." Beth looked up at Michael. "Have you shown these to anyone else?" "No. They're not exactly admissible evidence given how I obtained them." "Why bring them to me and not directly?" "To the district attorney." Michael hesitated. "Because you deserve to know the truth, whatever the legal ramifications, and because—" He seemed to struggle for words. "I've been where you are. Not exactly, of course, but close enough." Beth studied him with new understanding. "Sarah and Tom? Not physically, as far as I know, but emotionally. Years of secretive phone calls, private meetings, confidences I wasn't privy to." He shrugged, a gesture that failed to disguise the pain beneath. I think she was in love with him, maybe still is. The irony that he was in love with someone else the entire time isn't lost on me. Beth carefully returned the emails to the envelope. Thank you for bringing these to me. Will they help the case? They establish motive more clearly than we had before. As for admissibility, that's for the DA to determine. Michael stood. To leave, then paused. Sheriff Morgan, Beth, there's something else you should know. About Sarah's alibi for the time of Andy's death. Beth tensed. She claims she was at the hospital. She was supposed to be. But she called me around noon, asked me to reschedule her afternoon appointments, said she had an urgent personal matter. His eyes met Beth's. She didn't return home until after 6. After Michael left, Beth sat motionless, processing this new information. The picture forming in her mind was disturbing, not just of Tom's culpability, but of a possible conspiracy. Sarah's involvement, the missing hours, the text messages telling Tom to do whatever it takes. The courthouse clock chimed, signaling the imminent resumption of proceedings. Beth gathered herself, tucking the envelope into her uniform pocket. As she rose, she caught her reflection in the window glass, thinner, harder, the lines around, her eyes deeper than just days before. Grief and betrayal had physically transformed her, but something else was emerging from the ashes of her former life. A clarity, a resolve. In the courtroom, Beth took her seat just as Tom was led back in. This time, when he sought her gaze, she met it unflinchingly. She saw the momentary confusion in his eyes, followed by the first flicker of genuine fear. The final witness of the day was Sarah Wilson. As she took the stand and was sworn in, Beth leaned forward slightly, watching every micro-expression, every nervous gesture. Sarah testified about her friendship with Tom, her knowledge of the affair, and the text messages she'd exchanged with both men. Dr. Wilson, D.A. Carter asked, what did you mean when you texted Dr. Morgan, whatever it takes? Sarah's composure never wavered. I meant he needed to reason with Andy, to help him understand the consequences of going public for all their careers, reputations, families. Not that he should physically stop Deputy Chief Parker. Absolutely not. I would never suggest violence. As the cross-examination began, Beth passed a note to D.A. Carter, who read it with a slight widening of her eyes. After completing her current line of questioning, Carter approached the bench, requesting a brief recess to review new evidence. Judge Harrison granted 15 minutes. In the conference room, Carter examined the emails with growing interest. Where did these come from? A confidential source, Beth replied. One who also indicates Dr. Wilson's alibi for the time of the shooting may be fabricated. Carter's eyebrows rose. You're suggesting she was involved. I'm suggesting there's more to this case than a crime of passion or a struggle gone wrong. The emails establish premeditation. The timeline suggests possible coordination. And there's something else. Beth removed a small evidence bag from her pocket, a silver key on a medical center keychain. This was in Andy's personal effects at the scene. It's not to the cabin or any vehicle registered to him. I had a deputy check. It matches a storage unit rented 3 months ago under a false name, paid in cash. And you're just bringing this to me now. I only made the connection this morning. The rental agreement was in the name Thomas Parker, a combination of their names, like a married couple sharing a surname. Carter stared at the key, then at Beth. What do you think is in the storage unit? I don't know, but I intend to find out. When court resumed, Carter's cross-examination of Sarah took a sharper turn. Dr. Wilson, are you aware of any storage units rented by Deputy Chief Parker or Dr. Morgan? Sarah's carefully constructed composure cracked slightly. No, why would I be? Were you aware that Deputy Chief Parker was planning to come forward about the affair? He mentioned it might be time to tell the truth, yes. And how did that make you feel? given your close relationship with Dr. Morgan? Sarah shifted, uncomfortably. I was concerned about the professional ramifications for everyone involved. Concerned enough to encourage Dr. Morgan to stop him by whatever it takes. I've already explained what I meant by that. Carter approached the witness stand. Dr. Wilson, can you account for your whereabouts between noon and 3 p.m. on the day of Deputy Chief Parker's death? The courtroom tensed at the direction of questioning. Sarah's attorney rose to object, but Sarah spoke first, her voice sharp with indignation. I was at the hospital, then running errands. Why is this relevant? Because we have a witness who will testify that you specifically cleared your afternoon schedule that day, claiming a personal emergency. Sarah paled visibly. That's not accurate. I had appointments. Check the hospital records. We intend to. Just as we intend to execute a search warrant on Storage Unit 217 at Pinewood Secure Storage. At this, Sarah's composure collapsed entirely. Her eyes darted to Tom, who had gone rigid in his seat. The silent communication between them was unmistakable and damning. Judge Harrison, noting the distress of the witness and the unexpected turn in testimony, called an end to the day's proceedings. As court officers led Tom back to holding, Beth watched Sarah hurry from the courtroom, phone already at her ear. Outside the courthouse, away from the press and spectators, Detective Reynolds joined Beth beside her department SUV. We have the warrant for the storage unit, he confirmed. Team standing by. Beth nodded, her sheriff's instincts now fully engaged despite her personal connection to the case. Execute immediately and put surveillance on Dr. Wilson. Something tells me she might be planning an abrupt vacation. As Reynolds departed to carry out her orders, Beth stood alone in the courthouse parking lot, watching the sunset paint Pinewood County in shades of gold and crimson. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new pain, new understanding of just how deep the betrayal went. But for the first time since walking into her bedroom 4 days ago, Sheriff Elizabeth Morgan felt something other than shock and grief. She felt the grim satisfaction of a law enforcement officer closing in on the truth, whatever that truth might be, and whoever it might implicate. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.